in learning about assaulting in any position, seizing, if you will. So we're trying to find an objective, whether it's an actual objective in the game or just a position on the table that you need to occupy for whatever reasons you see fit. Last week we talked about fixing the enemy in position, and that's really about limiting his ability to support or defend or reinforce that target you're going to seize. Okay, today we're actually going to begin discussing the actual attack or actions on that objective. There's actually a lot here in the manual, so we're going to kind of pick and choose some highlighted spots that I think will help apply this to the tabletop pretty well. Now, the whole of this attack or action on the objective is really the culmination of your planning up to this point. You're putting a lot of your effort, as I mentioned in the last video, into seizing this. This is the most important part of the battle that you're partaking in, this seizing the objective. So a large portion of your force is being committed to this. So it matters how you use this force. So let's take a look at what the manual has to say, and then we'll talk about some points. All right, so in section 3, paragraph 96, it says, the commander employs overwhelming and simultaneous fire, movement, and shock action during the final assault. Now, the violent assault destroys, defeats, or drives the enemy from the objective area. Now, notice he mentioned here, it destroys, defeats, or drives the enemy from the objective. Now, it is possible that you can shoot them off the objective, but in a lot of game systems, that's not really that easy. So, again, we're going right back to the basics of having to bring in your army to close assault this final position. It goes on to say in paragraph 97 that the commander employs all fire support means to destroy and suppress the enemy and sustain the momentum of the attack. By carefully synchronizing the effects of indirect fire systems and available close air support, the commander improves the likelihood of success. Skipping down a little bit to part 100, we're going to skip down and then we'll go back. I want to start with this paragraph to lay out the next part of this subject we're going to talk about. It's against a well-prepared, integrated enemy defense. The commander must isolate and destroy portions of the enemy defense in sequence. Friendly forces must isolate, suppress, obscure, and bypass selected enemy positions. All right, so on the tabletop, you are facing a prepared enemy position. And you are, in order to assault that one objective and seize that objective that you're trying to hold or get, you are going to have to work through the rest of the opponent's army. Now again, you've tried to fix portions of it so they cannot move or reinforce or help defend that particular part you're going to seize. But there's more to it. Now that you're actually going to make your assault, there's a set of steps you can go and you want to make sure you bring all your assets, if you will, your combat capability to bear. But I'm going to use a graphic up. Let's see, I'll put it up in this corner. And this particular graphic is showing an objective in the upper left-hand corner. And you'll notice there are basically 3 concentrations of enemy. And you have, in the bottom of the diagram, you have a support element, an assault element, and a breach element. And in order to get to that one part, you have to break through several other positions. So that's the visual concept I want to go through here. In order to get to the objective, you may have to go through some sequential elements. But in each case, whether you're going to go through a lead defensive unit or the one that's just outside the objective, or on the objective itself, you're going to follow the same set of steps, okay? And that is going to be working your fire plan to incorporate as much combat capability in a proper sequence to make the attack successful. So, I'm going to put a link up here also to the video series on fire plan. So you kind of, if you haven't seen it, you'll be able to watch that or remind yourself on some of those concepts. Because we're going to use those in this step. Because now you're preparing for that final assault. Remember that the enemy position on the opponent is holding it, and that unit is able to keep you away, either by shooting you or engaging in close combat as you go and receiving your attack and beating you back. So it's very important you weaken that enemy position as significantly as you can prior to your very last assault, your last move, if you will. So think of it this way. You're going to bring up, like I said in the last video, about half your force is going to be dedicated to this final assault. And you're going to dedicate certain units to engage fire. It might be an artillery observer that's going to call in some indirect support. It might be an air support strike. You're going to maybe bring some indirect fire from an onboard piece of artillery. You're going to bring your own units up to engage with fire on that unit, and all the while you're positioning your assault, we're going to call it the assaulting unit, in a position where it can finally charge and take that position. So, think of one of the best examples of this really is in bolt action, because they have a concept they call pinning. But it still works in 40K as well. There are other systems that have similar suppression effects, and so all these same concepts will still work. When you bring the additional fire onto that enemy unit that you're going to finally assault, you are going to either disrupt it by making it harder for it to shoot at you when you're trying to charge it. You might actually cause it to break and run, which makes it that much easier for your assaulting unit to take that position. You're probably going to do casualties, so you're going to whittle down that unit in size so that now you're going to have overwhelming force charging it, engaging in close combat. The last thing you want to do is meet your opponent in a close assault with equal forces. You want to make sure you outnumber, or if you will, we'll call it outgun them, have more attacks and attack first, so that you are more likely to control the ground. You don't want to be in a position where you're attacked first in the close combat. So, putting the suppressive fire down weakens your opponent's ability to shoot back, potentially puts them in a bad morale position so that they can't shoot back or fight back effectively, or if you're lucky, even make them run away. And finally, whittling their numbers down. That is how you prepare for that last charge. So you want to pick the order in which you fire your units so that the furthest ones away are starting to deliver the initial suppression, okay? The initial attacks, the initial shooting. Then, as you move closer to, from your units moving up the table closer to that opponent, the infantry units that would possibly be able to assault, you can then decide whether you're going to assault with them or still shoot. Again, depending on how well that enemy unit's suppressed or whittled down. If they're weakened significantly, one of those, or your units, can actually be used to assault, which means you've given yourself the opportunity to have multiple of your attacking units assault the position. With this, you're giving yourself, within the one turn, multiple chances of seizing that objective that you've selected. Now, if you decide instead to continue shooting and reducing the effectiveness, the combat capability, or hopefully reducing the model count on the unit you're assaulting, that very last unit, the one closest to it, that has the best chance of success to close in, that's the one you finally send in. Now, I'll have to leave it to you to decide which of your units is best positioned to engage in close combat, but that's the one you'll put the focus on, and you'll make sure is in the position to assault and basically take the last move of that attacking assault group on the enemy position. Okay. Now, in 40K, I'll go through some specifics there. You have, as a charging player, you go in and you get first attack automatically. So you'll be able to engage your opponent. Now, some models, enemy armies, have the ability to attack back even though the model's been destroyed. So, Lash Whips, for example, in the Tyranid army. There may be others out there, but essentially it makes the attack really simultaneous. So yes, you get to roll first, but you don't prevent them from rolling the dead models back at you. So that could be a little dangerous. So that's why you want to try to whittle them down first. So you go in, you take your first shot. Hopefully enough models are removed so that what is left to attack you back just does not have the oomph or the combat capability to seriously damage you and put you in a stronger position so that you're on the position with more models. And because you have more of your assaulting force forward, who maybe have been shooting, they're ready to charge in as well to support it if your first assault doesn't drive the enemy off. And once you've figured out how many casualties each side has taken in that unit, then of course you roll for the morale to see if more models flee, and who knows, you might actually be able to cause the opponent's models to just go away. Now, if the opponent has the fly special rule, they will be able to disengage, and in a lot of cases will, because they want to preserve their unit and shoot back at you. But if they've done that, then they have given you the position. They have vacated the position, and now you hold the objective you intended to hold. Again, remember, objective here is not necessarily one of the things that counts toward victory, but it's a position that's important to you in achieving your ultimate victory. So it doesn't always have to be destroying the enemy outright. It can be simply pushing them off of the position you want to hold, and you can do that in 40K relatively easily. Now, in bolt action, as an example, you have several mechanisms to engage here. One is the constant shooting and hitting puts pin markers on the opponent's unit, which means any defensive fire they try to send your way is that much harder to hit. If you're lucky, you'll be able to get them to a point where they either choose to go down to minimize the damage that they receive from all this fire coming in, which means they cannot shoot back at you, or they're pinned so much that any shots are extremely inaccurate and have almost no chance of hitting you. So you'll have many, many more models present when it's time to charge. Of course, now here it's important how are you charging the opponent? Since in bolt action each unit acts individually, you can't charge with two units and have them both engage. You have to resolve one at a time with one order die at a time. So you'll engage with one, and if it's over open ground, no obstacles, you're able to attack first and deal casualties first. And that's important because, again, the fewer models that are remaining on the opponent's side, the fewer attacks back, and the more likely it is you're going to win that battle, that close combat. And in bolt action, every close combat will end with one unit or the other being destroyed. So if you can destroy more than the opponent does in that round, in that dice roll, you will be able to take the position that easily. Again, though, if you've attacked over open ground, they have a chance of this, because it's simultaneous then. Sorry, if you've attacked through difficult ground or against a barricade or obstacle, they're going to attack back at the same time. So you're not going to be able to reduce the number of attacks they have back at you. So you really need to have a much stronger attacking unit as far as numbers go than your opponent has. Now, this also, though, helps, if you think about it, having additional units ready to charge should that first one fail. So don't necessarily shoot with everything. Shoot with enough to keep it from falling or from doing any damage back to you, but don't overdo it, because you may need one of those other units to charge in and take up where the first one left off. As I mentioned this in an earlier video, I had an attack. I had a enemy unit of inexperienced troops. I was attacking with veterans. from a strictly mathematical perspective, I should have easily been able to lay waste to that unit, but I botched my roll, and they ended up doing one more to me than I did to them, and they took care of me. So you can't always rely in bolt action on one unit being able to do the job. So always have the second one available to you. Now, in bolt action as well, there is a consolidation rule. So the victor of a close combat assault, attacker or defender, gets to roll a d6 to figure out how far they get to move. If you have won and taken the opponent's position, that d6 will help you move on to the position. But if you've lost, the opponent, if you've put the fear into him enough, he may use that d6 consolidation to fall back away from you so he's not engaged again. That's still a win in your books. Not as glorious a win, but you've pushed him off the objective. And now the next unit can move that much closer, potentially still being able to charge, or at least moving in and shooting. So that is what you're trying to do in an action on the objective. In summary, it's focus the strength that you've determined to apply to that in that assaulting force, starting with the furthest away. Fire in to suppress the opponent and whittle them down as much as you can, and then the closer you get, start making a decision which units you're going to start keeping in almost a charge reserve, and which one you're going to charge with initially. Then go through the charge, resolve it, bring in your reserves if they need to. If the first unit didn't do the job, you can bring in the second unit, third unit, whatever, and eventually you'll be able to push that off. But it only works by putting overwhelming firepower on the target unit. A lot of us, if you think about it, you may actually, if you're doing this, great, you're ahead of the game over a lot of us. But some of us tend to take opportunistic chances. We happen to be in a position where we could charge, so we do. We don't necessarily plan it so that we whittle down the opponent and increase our odds. Always try to plan and focus, just like they said here in the book. Put overwhelming firepower, sustained, directed, and concentrated, multiple units on the target objective, and then move in and push them off. And the result, that is how it boils down. Now, there's a few other details that we'll cover in next week's video. So hopefully this has given you something to think about in a different way to approach close combat and assaulting. And over the next couple of videos, we'll probably go into some specific cases, some specific ideas. I might make those actual tactical videos instead of academy videos, but we'll see how that develops. Next week, though, we're going to develop this a little bit further. We're going to bring up some other concepts that the manual has. And then after that, we're going to talk about charging and assaulting with mounted units. Okay, so stay tuned. Share, like, and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope this is helpful for you. Until next time, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.